What you are about to listen to is one of our most replayed moments from one of our top episodes ever. A roundtable discussion breaking down the pros and cons of commission-based salons, booth renter salons, and salon suites. This episode is not short on controversy and touches everyone in our industry. Listen here to some of the key moments of the episode, and be sure to listen to the entire episode if you really want to dig in and hear everything these industry experts have to say about salon suites. Welcome to the Salon Scoop, the podcast that helps salon owners and salon professionals grow their business, boost their brand, and stay inspired. From salon marketing and social media to leadership and growth, we uncover the strategies and stories that move the industry forward. If you love learning, growing, and are serious about leveling up your salon business and brand, you've just found your new go-to podcast. Let's just delve right in. There's clearly been a shift in our industry. Everyone has seen it and felt it over the last, let's say, 5 to 8 years towards a different type of self-employed stylist or esthetician, right? There's always been employee-based salons. There's always been booth renter salons. But this whole concept of the salon suites really kind of took fire and has become quite big and obviously a popular option. Just sort of question to everybody here, why do you think that this model has become so prevalent in our industry over the last several years?
Well, Scott, I saw it moving in that way prior to the pandemic. You were starting to see the employee-based salon companies evolve over into a rental model where, like you and I had talked earlier, I saw right before the pandemic, you were still like the prevalent model, I think, was the open salon format that had independent self-employed stylists inside of it. There were starting to be more studios leading up into the pandemic, but I think just the timing of the pandemic and the timing of the trend, it was already moving that way. I think the pandemic just kind of put it on steroids, and it just really, I think, happened even faster. And so I think that was a piece of it. But if I had to really answer why I think overall it was moving in that direction, even before the pandemic, I have to go back to, I think it's the lack of leadership in the beauty industry. That's my 2 cents, is in order to have a really well-led, well-run employee-based model, you have to be a dynamic leader in order to really kind of maximize that potential there. And I think what has happened over many, many years, and I think there's many other things that have contributed to it, but I think one of the catalysts is that back, people who have worked for employee-based companies, some of those companies, and sadly, I think many of them, there just isn't a lot of additional support beyond just commission. So at the end of the day, it's like, what are you kind of working for? And it's like, well, I work for 55% commission, or I work for 60 or 50 or whatever those are. But when you try to ask more beyond that, like, what about benefits? What about education? What about coaching and support? I think for the salons through all those years that never really offered much more, I think I can see why stylists were like, what am I doing this for? Why am I sharing part of my income with an owner that I really am not seeing much of a benefit from? So because of that, I think it just naturally started evolving where if I can't, get the support that I need here, I'll just peel off and kind of seek something that I can't find. And in essence, start my own.
Then do it on your own. Yeah. And maybe, Hunter, we don't need your necessarily reasons necessarily why you made the switch yourself, but coming from that perspective that you have made that move, have you seen something in the industry? Why do you think it's been so prevalent over the last several years?
I think that was a really great observation, Gavin, how the trend was already kind of sneaking in, because I actually opened up my suite right when my quarantine lifted. So it was after our quarantine in Pennsylvania. And so it was in the middle of the pandemic, but funny enough, like before the pandemic happened, maybe like a couple months prior, I was looking into suites. And I was like, at the time I was like, oh, well, I don't think it's the right fit for me. Like maybe that's like a 5-year down the line situation. But a lot of consumer behavior analysts and business people out there are saying that the pandemic has moved us forward like 10 years, like in the way that people make moves within business and the way that consumers spend money. And I think that just goes to show you, like with the way that with what we're talking about right now, I think that that's not an exception to, that observation. And I think that people had a lot of time to, well, at least I did, sit down and like educate myself and really evaluate, right, where they want to be, what their true potential was. And I mean, how many educators and how many things did you see all over social media that were like sharing business tips and like how to make money right now and like how to get more clients when you come back out from the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that people just really took the time to like educate themselves, reevaluate their things, and then move on from there. And I think that was the decision for me. So
Larry, let's come back to you. I'm curious because you kind of went against this trend, right? That we're saying that there's a trend over the last several years of going towards more independent, but you had the booth renter salons, and you have been over the last, 10 years or so, been transitioning them to employee-based commission salons. Kind of why did you decide to go in that direction?
In the end, it was what I believed in. So when I left law enforcement and we had the booth rental salons, I loved it. The people that worked there were our friends, but there was just a large lack of systems, structure, accountability. I really didn't feel like we were doing anybody any justice. And, I guess it just came back down to the need for leadership and the ability to insert some leadership into everybody's life and help them in areas where I knew they needed help. Some were making really good money. Some were not, and a lot were making mistakes. Not even just in business, but in life. And I knew, coming from law enforcement and playing sports growing up and having good leaders in my life, what a difference leadership makes in people's lives. And as we started to take on employees and really make the effort to mentor them and give them direction, I saw how just the really positive influence that we were making. And honestly, again, it just comes down to, I knew in my heart that it was the right thing. It was the right thing to start to take the people that graduate from cosmetology school and mentor them with their life, with their finances, with their career. And oddly enough, we get as many applicants as you can imagine. So there are a lot of people who are looking for that and need that. And then at some point, some of them, maybe many of them will go to suites or open their own salon, and many say that they want to, and that's totally okay. But I just, again, it just felt like the right thing. I know in my heart that it is the right thing, so I feel good about it.
Kara, I'm going to flip the same question to you, actually, thinking about it. I mean, you were a stylist, for many, many years. And then you opened up, your salon. You were still a stylist for a while, but I know that you will no longer do hair. You are fully kind of in management leadership mode. And you are seeing both sides, the commission-based salon as well as the suite side. If you were to go back to be a stylist today, based on everything that you know from your experiences, which model do you think you could make the most money in?
See, I think it's like a tricky question because
that's why I'm asking it.
Yeah, I know, because I'm just like, well, I think that depending on the person, you have to be in a place that aligns with your values and also what gives you energy. Because there's nothing to say that if you love the management aspect of a suite and that fills you up as well, like you're gonna soar. But also, you might burn out, and then maybe you want to go back to commission where you can just come and go. Again, ideally, if you're in an unreal commission salon, that supports you and helps you figure out what your main motivator is. But I think just kind of a lot of what I've been coaching too is that financial will always be a motivator, but it's like figuring out what those other motivators are more important, and your financial is going to come. So that really can change in your lifetime, which I think is why I'm so passionate about options, because when I was, had 2 babies and I was ready to not be at a commission and be a crazy person, yeah, Suite would have been awesome and I would have freaking killed it. But now it's almost, you even talking to salon owners now, they're like, I just really want to be a commission stylist, or I want to come work at your suite. Can I do that? So it's kind of, it does change in a lifetime. But I think you really just have to figure out where you are in your life and what fuels you up instead of what drains you, I think is the biggest challenge, and how that changes too.
Gavin, you have a unique perspective in all this. You see the business coaching side of all these different models, right, from your various experiences. Can you share with us any data, that you might have gathered around these models? Karen mentioned there's a lack of education for people about, what the advantages and disadvantages are when it comes down to the business side of independent versus being an employee. Anything that you can sort of provide us that sort of shares the differences between the models?
Yeah, I think so. I always think of, if I have a 9-year-old daughter, and we have 2 generations. My mother-in-law both had hair licenses. My wife has a hair license. So I kind of think of one day, I hope that she'll have the 3rd generation of hair license. So when I say that, I'm talking to all of you as if, okay, this is what I'd tell my daughter. Doesn't matter what model you go to. It matters with, find your joy, find your happiness, find the thing that's really going to get you up out of bed and get you excited. But when it comes to money, which I think at some point, the artist has to hold the mirror up and say, there is money somewhere in this career path. And that's just the summit side of me saying, no matter what model you're going to, aim towards or go towards, you still have to look at the money. And so when I look at the money, here's what I want everyone to know is, if you look at what you pay in rent as a self-employed stylist, whatever that rent amount is, the goal would be that rent, you're multiplying that rent every single week. So I'll use an example. If I am getting charged $250 a week for my space, I need to generate 8 times that amount, which would be $2,000 in weekly sales. So I'll say that one more time. If I'm paying $250 a week in rent, I need to grow my service sales 8 times what my weekly rent would be. So 250 times 8 is 2,000. At the end of the week, when I hang up my shears and I'm heading to my, quality of life at home and whatever, I should have generated 8 times my weekly rent, or in this example, 2,000. Now, what I want others to hear also is, when I'm not doing that, what does that look like? And so I'm actually going to tell you, because I prepared for this. If you take your rent, so I'm going to go back to the $250 a week, just use that as an example. If we're only doing 3 times the rent, so let's just say I did 3 times my rent this week, Scott. I only did $750 this week in total service sales.
Yep.
That is the equivalent commission. If you took it over to an employee model, that is the equivalent commission of earning 32% commission. So again, if you were my daughter and you're like, I'm paying $250 a week. What'd you do last week? I did $750, Dad. It's like, you did 3 times your rent. That is the equivalent of a 32% commission rate. So just know that when you do all the math. And I'll keep going. If you do 4 times your rent, it's going to be the equivalent of a 40% commission rate. If you do 5 times your rent, you're going to be close to about 45% commission rate. If you did 6 times, 48%. 7 times your rent would be close to 49% commission. 8 times your rent is what I was saying to us at Summit when we coach self-employed stylists. that's where we really try to get people, is 8 times their weekly rent, which would be the equivalent of 53% commission. And then the last two, Scott, would be if I can do weekly rent times 9, I'm at 54% commission. And if I can do weekly rent times 10, I'm close to about 57% commission. So again, I'm not one to here to argue, what's better or worse. I just kind of look at it as find that happiness, find that joy, find what gets you up out of bed, but then thrive at what you're doing. So whether either of the models, make the money that you're worth for your time, for your investment, for your families. So I think that's a key piece of it. And then one other maybe data point would be whatever you're paying per square foot. So this is where if we deconstructed that $250 a week, if that's what we were paying each week, let's just say hypothetically, without getting into a calculator, let's just say that's about $25 a square foot. Whatever I'm renting, my room, my space, if I can figure out what I'm paying per square foot, like as a salon owner, that's always a number before I sign a new lease for the entire space of the company. That's one that I'm always trying to negotiate and work with. But once as a self-employed stylist, if you can figure out that number, what is my rent per square foot, then let's just you find out it's $25 a square foot. You need to average for your average ticket 3 times as a minimum your square foot average. So if I'm at $25 a square foot, I need to be at a $75 average ticket. And that would be the minimum. What you don't want is someone who's going to pay $25 a square foot and their average ticket maybe is only 2 times. They're only doing $50. So it kind of, my analogy of that is if I rented space in Beverly Hills and I pay premium square footage, my average ticket for every client I touch should be super high because I'm paying premium square footage. Versus the opposite, if I'm in a little blue collar town like I grew up in Kokomo, Indiana, and I'm only paying $14 a square foot, I can have a much lower average service ticket in Kokomo than I would in Hollywood, California, or Beverly Hills or whatever. But those two things, I think if every self-employed stylist knew what that was, I think it would give them something to shoot for and hopefully change their quality of life just by their goal setting and earning potential.
Yeah, and at least understanding it. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, Gavin. I think that scale, hopefully listeners will start to, take out a calculator and do a little bit of math for themselves, right? And I think it's great if you're currently, a commission-based employee in a salon and you've been considering switching out on your own into a suite. Just having that sense of what you mentioned there, it's like, okay, well, if I'm currently making, 45% commission, then I need to be, making at least, I think you said 6 times my rent. And that at least gives people a bit of a sense where they can make some calculations to see what's realistic or not. And, obviously there's more to it than just the financial side as well. Maybe the environment is something that's important that's going to bring you success. And to me, success is happiness, right? Success is not how much money you make. Success is how happy you are in your life and your ability to just be fulfilled with what you want to be doing with your time. So, but anyways, that's fantastic information. Thank you so much for sharing that.
What you've just heard is a snapshot of one of our most listened to episodes, and I'm sure you can understand why. There was so many amazing insights shared in the full episode, and I encourage you to listen to it to discover the trend of owning both a commission-based salon and a salon suites operation, the pros and cons of working with each structure, how retail sales are impacted, predictions for how the future of our industry will evolve, and advice on which model is best at different points in your career. The full episode is called Salon Structure Showdown, and we've linked it in the show notes. Enjoy. Thank you so much for listening to the Salon Scoop podcast. This show is produced by Salon S.O.S, a digital marketing agency by industry professionals for industry professionals. If you want simple and affordable solutions for any of your salon marketing needs, such as websites, client loyalty, Google search rankings, social media, or more, come visit us at Salon